Santa Monica and Vine. That's as like legendary as something out of a Star Is Born.
Right.
With Judy, did you on roller skates? Were you a car hop like she was in that movie?
No, I had my little yellow rubber gloves, and I was incognito. It was fantastic.
So there's people out there that can say,
jobs.
I drank at this place. Turns out Renée Zellweger was serving back there as a bar back.
Oh yeah, I can make a list of the people that I served in there. It was the best fly on the wall job I've ever had.
Big showbiz legends types?
Oh sure, yeah. I mean, let's see, Billy Idol would come in there.
Get out! I just met Billy Idol the other night.
Isn't
Crazy.
he fun?
Yeah. His daughter works at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, believe it or not.
I do believe it.
Pasadena, yeah.
I do believe that.
Dude.
Smart guy, yeah.
I only read the first couple of paragraphs of any story about other people that are making a movie.
Oh, that's wise.
Because that's where the juicy thing. And I read the thing where you couldn't believe that they were asking you to play Judy. It was like, why would they come to me to play Judy Garland?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
What'd they say? What'd they say?
I don't know if they ever actually answered the question. They just invited me to come over to London so we could talk about it. So that, we could just talk about it.
So they actually ponied up your airfare to go? Who turns down a free trip to London? Nobody does that.
By the way, they said, come over, we'll talk about it. We'll just take some pictures and see if you feel what it looks like, if it's possible. We'll just see if it's possible. And then we'll go to Abbey Road and record some things.
Oh, you were a fish on a hook there. You were done.
You knew.
You could not say no.
Could not say no.
So what is the first thing? What is the first thing you do when the legend is like playing Judy Garland? It's like playing Elvis, or it's like playing John Lennon or something. What's the first thing you do?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of material.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
You watch everything.
You watch everything. All of her, her body of work.
Did you watch the variety show that you did on?
Yes.
That was a work of art, really.
It was so good.
It was stunning, and the fact that nobody was tuning in on it because
Bonanza.
Is that what killed it?
They were up against Bonanza.
Do you know who was one of the house pages in the studio audience helping seat people in backstage and wearing a little CBS suit? David Geffen.
Are you kidding?
He was a CBS page for the Judy Garland show, and evidently helped tend to the kids for Lorna Luft and is it Joey? Yeah. Did they talk to you about it?
No, I didn't know that.
No.
I had to ask him about that.
Oh yeah?
Oh, I'm still fascinated. When you go into the rabbit hole, you just get more greedy, don't you find? I mean, don't you find?
You get frustrated because you found this nugget that explains the entire character, and you can't find any place to put it in the movie. There's something that is. Is there any way we can work this up? We had one thing that found out. I asked Joanne Rogers. He said, what did Fred drink in the morning? And Joanne said, did he have coffee? No, he drank hot pomegranate juice. And so I said, cranberry juice. He had hot cranberry juice. And I said, I went to Mari Heller. I says, is there any way we can get it? She says, the most we're going to be able to do is have a glass of red liquid sitting on the counter while you're talking on the phone. I said, good enough for me, as long as we can get that.
Well, it might explain some things, because you might be able to, you'll see it. You'll see it.
That's right. Maybe some red teeth.
How interesting. What was your because it's different when you're playing a person who's lived. Yeah. There's a different responsibility.
Well, now, I talked to a lot of people who had very specific long-term relationships with Fred.
Nice.
Who could tell me all about everything about him, how he took his work, how regular he was, meaning that he was, he was very dedicated to doing this show in Pittsburgh. But Judy, you're dealing with the legend of Fred has not gone through any kind of like boulderization that it has with Judy. I mean, the legendary status of everything that she's been through and how she became who she was.
No.
Come on.
No, Sid.
Judy.
No. No. I'm working harder than you would ever believe.
Are you?
And right now, my husband is making a deal for me that means I can start over.
You're not listening.
I have someone I can rely on now.
All the stories between just individual recordings of certain songs, like The Man That Got Away and whatnot. Did you have an overabundance of information you had to sift through?
Well, you know how, well, you try to be judicious about what it is that you take as fact. You know, consider the source.
Right.
So there was a lot of contradictory information, and a lot of it was, it seemed like, oh, the truth is in here somewhere, but that's not it.
Right.
It sort of lies in between these bits of information. And there are so many biographies out there of people who claim to have known her that don't get mentioned in the biographies of the people, or the autobiographies rather, of the people who we know knew her from public record, or because it's a familial connection, you know? So, but yeah, I guess I mean, there's never such a thing, is there? Because if there's so much information, inevitably something's going to become repetitive.
Yeah.
In a way that, okay, that substantiates the suspicion.
The only thing that kind of helps, the only shortcut we have is in the choice of wardrobe. Because you have a photograph and they've made it, and then there it is. So, but you know, that's the beginning of layering on the suit of armor that does become something. And there was two things about your movie. One is when you're in the cab and you're trying to find a place to stay, and Lorna, the daughter, says, "Are you going to sleep now, Mommy? Because you took a couple of pills." And Judy says, "No, these are the other kind." Means you're going to go up. So there, you've laid down a foundation of somebody who was pretty strung out by the time. He was suffering from a lot of lifetime of taking mood-altering drugs just in order to get along with the day. Those stories of them putting Dexedrine in her and Mickey Rooney's soup so they could get through those Andy Hardy movies, you know.
You see, you knew about this.
Yeah.
Because it's not something that a lot of people were familiar with. I wasn't. I wasn't aware of any of that.
I can't remember, in the scenes with Louis B. Mayer, do they make mention of any of that?
Yeah, there's a little bit of it. She can't sleep anymore.
Right.
The woman who's with her says, that's not my department.
You look at that output prior to The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And she had already worked herself into a puddle in that backbreaking kind of quick, like all those big musical numbers for those Andy Hardy movies and everything else that she did. And how old was she when she made
Wizard of Oz?
Yeah.
She was 16, wasn't she? 15 or 16?
Oh man, that's tough.
Yeah, she was just starting to, her body was just starting to change. And I think that one of the tools that they used to keep her slim, besides binding her and trying to keep her weight down, because they didn't want her to be voluptuous, because they had finally found a way to market her as the girl next door, and God forbid that Dorothy be sexy, you know. So they bound her and kept her, you know, her weight down.
I was disappointed that
drugs.
we didn't get to see you recreate moments like from the Harvey Girls or Meet Me in St. Louis or these other ones where she had, this is from what the reading that I did, where she had that kind of like negative self-image that she wasn't the prettiest woman in the world on camera, and yet she's the only one you look at.
I know,
you know?
she's just ethereal, wasn't she? She was so beautiful. It's impossible to imagine that she had that, I don't know, that she'd been broken down to where she couldn't see it.
The expression that she was able to put into what was, I'm guessing, was pre-recorded tracks. You know, the songs were all pre-recorded somehow.
In the MGM
in
movies?
the MGM days.
Yeah, she talks about that. Yeah, that they would go in the morning and lay down the tracks. And I heard that she did something like 28 takes of Man That Got Away until she could recognize that everybody in the room was feeling it the way she was feeling it. And then she was happy.
But then the recreation of that on camera to a playback in which you're not really impacting the soundtrack, because you are essentially, you're miming or mimicking or recreating something. But her eyes and her face and the emotion that you put into that is, I wouldn't know how to do that, you know, from the beginning. And you don't sing for the longest time in the movie.
Interesting.
I was checking the watch. I said, okay, this is a movie about Judy Garland. We're going to get bang, bang, bang goes the troll. We're going to get something right off the bat. And it is a long time before you sing.
It's interesting. It didn't feel that way to me.
Oh, really?
Here it comes. It's interesting. I didn't think about that, but I did know that Rupert wanted to establish the story in a way that you would understand where she was in terms of her ability to access her instrument at that time. So you wouldn't be quite sure whether or not she was going to succeed. He wanted to set that up so that it seemed a precarious moment when she stepped onto the stage.
There's a lot of education that you have to go on in your movie, because I don't think anybody could believe that Judy Garland was broke, or that
was
Judy
shocking.
Garland was not wanted,
Made
or
no
Julie couldn't
sense.
get a job. No, she was always Judy Garland.
Yeah, it made no sense to me. I mean, she's iconic and deserves her place at the table of international superstars for all time.
Well, yeah.
You know? So that she would be having financial challenges.
When you finally sing,
shocking.
and the fireworks go off, and everybody who's watching the movie has to collect the back of their head because you've blown them away so much. Those weren't pre-recorded songs. Did you do? You were recording those live?
Yes.
I'm guessing.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And did you do them all in a row because of the block shooting? Were you always in that space?
No, we could do a couple numbers a day. There were a couple of days when we would have to cram in a lot of things on the side. Like we did the San Francisco stuff, which also included a lot of choreography, and then we'd throw in some, you know, which one did we do that day? Someone Who Loves Me, or Needs Me, rather. Well, yeah, like, you know, just then. But we had a week or something to get all of that stuff together.
It's hard enough just to go and figure out how to shoot the scene that you've sort of memorized and familiarized with the text, but when you also have to do all that rehearsal for the musical numbers themselves, which is equal to preparing for a Broadway show or something. How do you get through a day? I mean, this is what I always think about when I look at these old musicals, particularly, you know, and Judy, without a doubt, is like, man, they were in a rehearsal hall somewhere for, you know, a long time before they ever put on the makeup and showed up on the set in order to shoot it for real. What was the rehearsal process like for you? How much did you have to work on those songs before you got around to the day that they were on the shooting schedule?
Well, the songs I started by myself before any of the pre-production began. After that conversation, the initial conversation at Abbey Road in London, because why not? Because of course you say yes.
They couldn't throw in, you know, Buckingham Palace or something like that in there as well.
Gosh, why didn't I ask about that? Yeah, you know, that was fine. You drive and they actually let you in. That was pretty miraculous. Yeah, that was a good day, by the way. Have you been to Abbey Road? Sorry to get tangential, but I know you're a big music fan.
Yeah,
so
I have.
What were the circumstances?
They were pretty heady.
Tell me.
We were with Olivia Harrison, George Harrison's widow, and said, "Oh, come on by because we're going to listen to some stuff." And we ended up going. And you go to Abbey Road, and everything is Abbey Road. There's that stairwell, and there's the studio where it actually happened, and nothing really changes in those studios except the equipment, the walls and the floors and the piano, and they're all pretty much the same thing as they always have been.
And they kept the old boards. The boards are the same.
Yeah,
the
and there's a little
Whirlies are the
room that
same.
you go up where, you know, they said, and it's stunning. I mean, you're vibrating while you're in there, and it's not hard then to go back and look at certain photographs and realize that, oh, well, that mic was right. Mic was right here, and it was taken right there, and you hear the music. The sound stages are a lot in the same way. What is now Sony Pictures was MGM.
Yes, that's
and
right.
the proportions of the streets and the stages are all exactly as they were.
Yes.
And I think they've just begun to do things like put up the list of the movies that were shot in certain places.
Outside of the stage. Yes,
and
I've seen that.
there is like, the funny thing is, this is where they shot the Yellow Brick Road was right here. And you realize that, well, the Yellow Brick Road is in an awful lot of that movie, so it's probably on every one of these sound stages, you know, one way or another. It enters into that.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you know what this is? It's Lloyd. Lloyd.
Hold, please.
We can't fire him, can we?
Hello, Lloyd. Oh, it's nice to meet you.
How many years have you been acting now? How many years?
I would have to. I got my first professional job as an actor when I was 20.
What was it?
I was at the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival. Yeah, I got into the union. I got into Actors Equity doing repertory Shakespeare. So that was 43 years ago.
Wow, but see, did you know that you wanted to do this?
No, when I started going to the theater because there was required for some classes that I was taking. But I thought I was going to be a lighting designer or a stage manager.
Really?
I didn't. I thought that being an actor was this other. I didn't know where you could get a job doing that. I thought you had to be like, you had to go through some miracle of discovery or something like
You were
that.
anointed, or you?
Or you went to England and studied somewhere. You went to Juilliard, maybe. I thought I was going to be working at like Marriott's Great America and the Roadrunner Tasmanian Devil half-hour, thrill show.
How did you get into that from Oklahoma? What was your
Oakland,
exposure?
California.
Oh, Oakland. But you were from. But you're from.
Look, you're from Texas, so everything becomes
Comes
Oklahoma.
that way. Yeah, it goes that way.
Oklahoma.
You're from Oakland.
Yeah, I'm from
okay.
Oakland.
So you always had.
I ended up studying theater arts for I went to junior college and I did a show. I was in a play that I did Our Town, and then I was in State College in Sacramento, and I didn't get cast. This is funny. All things will pass. All things, this too shall fade. I didn't get cast in the show at school, and I thought I was an abject failure because I'd come to Sacramento to be a theater arts major, and I couldn't get cast in a show. So, but there was a play that was being cast downtown at a sort of like not really a regional theater, but a semi-professional theater company. And the guy who ended up being the guest director of it invited me and a few other people to, his real job was his artistic director of the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival. And he needed bodies to change over the sets because they were still in rotating rep. But everybody got a part in one of the shows. And he said, he was an Irishman named Vincent Dowling. And he said, now, Tom, I can't pay you a salary, but I can give you something much, much more valuable. And that is experience in the professional theater. Which means like you're gonna work for nothing. Which we did. But he was absolutely right, because you end up doing it. And then from there I didn't, without even realizing it, I had become a professional actor overnight, meaning I was paid to do something. I had just enough money for, gas. And I ended up going to New York City based on the advice of some really great pragmatic professional actors who I worked with. And from there, after that, it's all just how many cards land in the hat, Oh, I got cast in a TV show, and next thing I know, I'm in Los Angeles trying to just being that guy waiting for the phone to ring. What
was it that made you go to New York? I'm just curious because there's that moment when you
did you have that? You were
I
in,
just
you were in
ran out
Texas.
of things to do. I never considered it as a profession either.
Right, so you're in Texas.
Yeah, college.
Right. Did you go to Los Angeles or New York?
I went to LA.
Okay, all right. I was from California,
and you went to.
I didn't like LA, and I knew a lot of people that just kind of went down there and they disappeared in the mist. And I was working with professionals, trained professionals who'd done an awful lot of theater, and says, if you come to New York, you can audition for anything that exists in show business. From Broadway plays to, being in the chorus of tour boat shows. You could go out on the Princess Cruises and sing selections from High Button Shoes, which I could never do. And it was just there, and it's really who you meet, and then somebody introduces you to somebody else and says something. The next thing you know, you're in somebody's office. And, potential and is new talent is kind of like coin of the realm. And then they throw you out there and see how you do. And the first thing I found myself, my first actual, I made a pilot for Bosom Buddies, but my first actual thing that aired on TV was my episode of The Love Boat. I was on The Love Boat in 1980. And, the night.
What was the episode?
Oh,
because I was watching.
It was I was on it, and but for some reason I was cast as an old college fraternity buddy of Gopher, who comes on and hit on Julie McCoy, and then he pretends that and they almost have a love affair, but then they laugh, but they gang up on me in order to make me feel like I can't get laid on the Love Boat or something. I was like 10 years younger than Fred Grandy. There's no way we could have gone to. But I drove through the main gates of 20th Century Fox where the set from Hello Dolly was still up. And I went on to stage, I'm going to say stage 24 or stage 19 or something like that. And I was on the friggin' Love Boat. And when it aired that night, I can't tell you what it meant to my world. You know, my 5th grade teacher called me up and said, I can't believe Tom, you were on the Love Boat. It was a big deal.
You made it.
Yeah.
Did you have a party?
No. We just watch it.
Watch?
No, it wasn't. I couldn't afford a party, so we just watched it with the kids. But my son Colin, he was he was only like 3, maybe 3 or 4, and at the end of the movie, at the end of the Love Boat, it's sailing away, and they show the closed credits. He started crying. And I said, why are you crying? He says, because you're going away on the Love Boat. He thought I was on that boat sailing away. It was very, very sweet.
Sweet Colin.
What was your first? What was the first thing that the world got to see you?
First thing, because I did a lot of commercials for a
all right,
while.
Okay, this is great.
For like a year,
all right, so
2 years.
My wife did 8 million commercials as well, and I've put them together. And I'm astounded how many times I saw her growing up on television.
Oh, you're kidding.
Oh, it said you were in the Kodak Crank commercial? Oh my Lord! Oh, you were in that Coors Light commercial? Oh my Lord! What was a extraordinary thing you had to do in a commercial?
Coors Light.
Coors Light.
Yes. I had to rollerblade down a hill, carrying a 6-pack on my shoulder, in a bikini.
Of course. Rightly so.
And by the way,
let's look at that clip right now, if we could.
Oh, thank God I'm not going to tell you where it aired, so you can't find it.
It was Coors Light. Was it a national? Was it a national?
It was not.
It was not a national.
And now, as I sit here in this pink chair, I might be glad of that. But no, I'm so fascinated to talk to you about that because that you just had the inclination that it was time to go, and you had children at the time.
Yeah.
So that's a big decision that you're going to take that chance.
It was the only thing I knew how to do. There's the only skill that I had any sort of like paths that I can say I have a resume. I did these 4 roles at the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival. Then after a second season, I said, I have these 8 roles at the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival that I did.
And were people patting you on the shoulder going, yeah, good luck? Or were they encouraging you because they could see that
the great friends that I made there understood that we were all we all had the same desire. And that is to celebrate storytelling somehow. We all just dug it more than anything else. One of the things that even Vincent said was, work in the theater is more fun than fun. And when he said that, I said, that's exactly right. Because nothing else I do in life is nearly as exciting as getting ready to be in a show.
I've never heard that saying before, and it applies. That's the only way to describe it.
Because you did plays and you studied in college like crazy.
No, I didn't. I'm like you. I didn't get cast. I didn't actually go to college to study acting. I was going to be a journalist, and I failed.
Well, it's a good thing to deal with.
No,
sometimes.
I failed the typing test. I didn't type enough words in however many minutes.
So that's the only requirement of being a journalist?
Well, to get into the journalism school. So I was waiting to go the next semester, and I started to work. And I started working a lot, and one thing led to the next, and then I started to think maybe I might consider it.
Okay, so outside of commercials.
Yeah. Okay.
What was
so long ago?
What was the half hour or 1 hour or motion picture that they cast you in that you ended up?
The first thing, I did something with John Avildsen.
Yeah.
Called 8 Seconds.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And it's a blip. I played the indiscretion.
Mm-hmm. But you were in a movie.
Yes. Pretty special, right? I didn't know. I wasn't sure. I didn't know.
Here's what happened.
Who he was.
You were in 8 Seconds.
Yeah.
And even if the movie didn't come out yet, the next meeting you went to, it said Renée Z. And in a parentheses, it says, in 8 seconds.
Yeah.
You were in a movie. So therefore,
right.
You were automatically had this other tangible, potential as you were walking in.
Yeah, there was that. Yeah. I think the first film was the first lead that I played was in the Chainsaw Massacre. And it was an independent film that was financed by a local lawyer who had somehow been involved in the original. And yeah, the director was
Wow.
doing it locally, and that's where I met McConaughey.
Ah,
Yeah, because we had done Dazed and Confused together, but we didn't meet on that set.
who we? Forgive me. Dazed and Confused is one of the most important movies of the 20th century.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Were you a senior in that? Are you a bad girl, mean girl?
I was filler. They needed more senior girls, but I don't think they had a budget for more senior girls.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't cast out of Austin. They had cast it elsewhere. But they said, why don't you come and be, a featured player? So I had to be there every day. But, I was just basically watching, and it was a great experience because I got to watch and come to understand how the different departments work.
Ladies and gentlemen.
What? No. What do you mean you can't? There's an audience out there waiting to hear you sing.
My mouth dry and it could fall apart.
Listen to me.
I can't.
You'll be fine. Now, on you go.
I was wanting to ask you so many things about your experiences in New York and the difference between playing characters that you sort of have a little more liberty in defining yourself and discovering yourself, and then playing this person who is well known, who is, pretty iconic in terms of his appearances weekly and the way that he influenced an entire generation of children, of people. And I was curious of a couple things in your process with that. I mean, by the way, congratulations. What a beautiful representation.
Well, thanks.
I mean, really.
Likewise.
But that's just something that you do. You have this, it's
so scary. It's scary, isn't it?
It's weird
Yeah.
because you're such a recognizable, unique person, and yet you disappear in whatever it is that you do. It's really magic. But anyway, beyond that,
all right.
I got to ask you, in the experience of playing him, how is it different to you when you're? What do you look for in terms of the parameters?
I have played a lot of real people, factual people.
Yes.
Charlie Wilson and Charlie
Right.
Wilson's War, Sully and Sully.
So good.
Richard Phillips and Captain Phillips, and a lot of times Jim Lovell and Apollo 13. And you get to meet them, and you get to say,
Streets of
okay,
Philadelphia.
for good or for bad,
Yeah.
I'm playing you, so you're going to have to make your peace with me playing you, and you'll also have to make your peace with me saying things you never said and doing things you never did, and perhaps providing motivations that you yourself didn't feel. But at the same time, I want to be as accurate as possible to the behavior and the procedure of what you went through. That's a really good bridge to work with somebody to get there. Fred, number one, is gone. And the interview processes, of which is you can't get enough of that. I watched 8 million hours of Fred's program. There was that excellent documentary called "Won't You Be My Neighbor?"
Yeah. It was beautiful.
That is actually a companion piece. I think when we saw that, I actually said to Mari, who was the director of A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Mari Heller. I said, is there a reason to actually make this movie anymore after the documentary came out? And it's actually a wonderful companion piece, one for each. The biggest challenge I felt as portraying Fred was the genuineness of him. You think about it, he's not going through an extraordinary crisis. He doesn't have a thing that he wants to make happen. He's not, trying to get home from the moon in sort of big struggle. He's literally just being Fred Rogers being interviewed by a journalist.
Right.
And I think because cynicism is the default mode for an awful lot of them, even as the actor I was coming on, I says, is there something specific that I don't know that I need to somehow be able to hit? And his wife Joanne and all of his coworkers, even his two boys, I don't think they had the language necessarily in order to communicate that there was no agenda. He was just simply a guy. He was a cracked vessel who worked very hard at his job and took it very, very seriously. And I think that when the job you're taking seriously is to make 2-year-old kids feel safe in the world, that's not necessarily a real active choice, you know. That's not, there's not a lot of
How do you?
Sturm and drang to it. There's
Right.
no, you don't train for that. You
Right.
don't learn how to fly a plane or something like that. You're not dealing with it. You have to instead just embody this kind of ministerial quality, because he was an ordained minister. He was a Presbyterian reverend, you know.
Yeah.
But his church was this television show they did. And if you if you're not specific about that, you're just going to come off as some sort of like saint that always has benevolent, beguiling eyes, you know, and always has a gentle manner. And the outside of Mari Heller did me a great favor, because in the first meeting we had with, and you I'm sure you face this as well as Judy, which is, how deep are we going to go on this look? You know, I get a wig, you know, but I got a very specifically shaped head. I have specific teeth. Are we going to do his teeth? I have a specific nose. We're going to do his nose. How far are we going to go to reconstruct our body into these very well-known icons? And Mari just said, we'll do a wig and we'll do some eyebrows. And that's that. I said, great. Knowing that that's the parameters, that tells me where I'm going to have to make the construct of everything else. Celebrity, mercy.
You don't consider yourself famous?
Fame is a four-letter word, like tape or Zoom or face. What ultimately matters is what we do with it.
And the voice and the lilt in his voice and his movement, the way that he carries himself, he's such a gentle presence.
I had a great difficulty slowing down.
Interesting.
And if I was going to show you, if we were going to sit down in the movie, I would get to a point and say, okay, that's my first day of shooting. They had been working for 2 weeks, and this is my first day of shooting.
Yes, because there's a stillness that you embody.
Yeah, but
yes.
compare that first day of shooting stillness to a week later, in which, first of all, Mari Heller has, you know, kicked my butt just enough, and I have learned how to feel as though I'm not just wearing clothes, but that the clothes are wearing me, and I become something else. I'm a wiseacre, and I talk a lot, and I have a lot of energy, and to slow down like that. How often does a director come to you and say, "Take more time with this"? They never say that.
Oh, no.
They never say
No,
it.
most of the
Easy.
direction that you get in a career is, speed that up.
Yeah.
Speak
Yeah.
fast.
Just say the
Act
words. Just
faster.
say, act faster. Say the word. And you, as Judy, I mean, you had this ongoing, constant twitching that was going on that came from, you know, a different source besides just a personality. But
Yeah, and
were
it
you
is
exhausted
interesting.
at the end of some working days?
No, probably. But, that's one of those things that you train yourself not to pay attention to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
because it's irrelevant.
Right.
You can't do anything about it. So there's
Oh,
no reason
if you look
to,
at a clock,
you know.
there's a reason why, you know, your watches never work when you're performing something. Because if you actually keep track of the time, you're doomed. Oh my God, we aren't going to be
12 hours
here.
before
We're going to be
breakfast.
here till 10 o'clock at night. You can't let that. You can't
No.
let that happen. To
No,
you.
definitely not.
can't let
And with, there are certain things where you don't want to stop anyway, because
Oh.
you get greedy and you just want more material. So.
And it happened, I must say, particularly when we were working in the land of make believe,
Oh,
and
gosh.
the opening. I could not get enough of Fred in Fred's house. I took naps on the set just because.
Oh, you're kidding.
Well, there's a comfy couch there, and so I don't want to go all the way back to a dressing room. And there it is. It just
And it just felt-
I wanted to stay there all day. When they finally wrapped, it's like, I got to take off these clothes. I got to go back and be myself again. I loved being in Mr. Rogers' house.
Ensconced in that.
As Mr. Because it was just so wonderfully familiar.
And he created probably a sense there was a different kind of peace.
Oh,
you know?
very much. And we actually had his lighting grid, and his lighting diagrams were what we used in the show.
Wow.
And Mari went off and found these old Ikigami video cameras that are hard to find. And so even if you were like looking at the monitor of what the camera was seeing, it was just wonderfully soothing. It was
Wow, how special.
It was just beautiful. It was very pleasing. Though,
So
but that's
special.
that goes beyond, the amount of bobby pins or how much weight you've lost, or whether or
of
not you really
course.
got the right slouch down or something.
No, of
like
course.
that. Right.
But did you get from, I don't know, your conversations, or because you were saying earlier, it's not really a proactive thing when your goal is something that is sort of it's internal. It's not something that you can easily express physically or in the choices that you make. But did you get a sense that he recognized the importance of what he was doing? I mean, because we've seen that he's spoken out to Congress and all of that. But do you think that, and how did you capture that?
There was Tom Junod, who was actually the journalist on which the movie is based. He was around a set a lot, which I thought was fantastic, because if anybody knows that movies are going to make a cockamamie version of what you really went through, it's going to be like a journalist who did the same thing at some point. And I asked him about the interviews, and Matthew Rhys, who plays Lloyd, who was the alter ego for Tom, went through the same thing, which was experiencing the jujitsu that Fred used as a self-defense mechanism. And once he told me that, I was able to go back, and I had all these tick marks from an awful lot of the interviews that he had done, in which I said, oh, that's where he turns it around. Because even like with any interviewer, say, Charlie Rose, they'll say something like, well, do you ever have a dark side? Do you ever get very angry, Mr. Rogers? And he goes like this. He goes like, well, yes, of course. I'm just like anybody. There are times that I get very angry, and I'm sure that you, at times, sometimes have a great difficulty communicating what you want. And so he literally it's like he allows the question to boomerang around him and come back on it. And he, as Joe and Bill and a few other people at QED said, he was the master at that. And I think it comes off as best. There wasn't a person who knew, who worked with him in Pittsburgh, who didn't say, when you were talking to Fred, you were the only person that mattered in the world, because that's what his connection was with these little kids. And a 2 or a 3, see him interact with a 2 or a 3-year-old kid, or even kids who just watched him when they were 2 or 3, and now they're 8 or 11. They are already so vested in the investment that he put into them, that it's, by and large, grown-up speak to kids in a lot of questions and ultimatums. What's your favorite class at school? Who's your favorite football team? Oh, do you like to dance? What's your favorite kind of dance? Oh, really? Did you have a good... They don't pause and wait for an answer. They suppose onto them. How can a kid have a favorite class at school? They can have a fun class at school. They can have a class that they look forward to. But the idea of them having a favorite class requires some sort of judgment that a 2 or a 3 or 4-year-old kid probably doesn't have. And he knew that. He knew that. His ability to share a moment in real time with somebody. And that was his ministry with little kids. But it was a self-defense mechanism with adults.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. He was awfully good at it. Because you think about it, if he's a minister, let's imagine he's a minister and he's tending to his flock. If someone comes into the office to talk to the minister, they're not to talk about him. They're coming in to talk about themselves. And that's what he was always able to get somebody to do, to talk about themselves. And Matthew Rhys was talking about the amount of time that a journalist uses as an ally, because Tom would say, hey, I could always outweigh my subject. I could outweigh them. I would just be out there on the periphery waiting for them to get bored or say something else, and then I'll find out, then I'll pounce. Fred Rogers could wait them out with the best of them.